aka JT, and you are watching BrandTalkk, another way to talk. There's no yelling, there's no screaming, there's just good old conversation. And today is going to be no exception. I have one of my favorite personalities here visiting with us today to talk about his brand. And he says, "Do I have a brand?" And I said, "Boy, do you have a brand." And his name is Charles Busch. And before I bring him on in, what I like to do is read his bio. And I am just so excited to have him here with us today because I always learn something from Charles Busch every time I talk with him. And if you don't know who Charles Busch is, he is an actor, playwright, cabaret entertainer, and drag pioneer. I don't know whether or not he was Davy Crockett or not, but anyway, he's a drag pioneer. He is the author and star of such plays as The Divine Sister, The Lady in Question, Red Scare on Sunset, The Confessions of Lillian, and Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, one of the longest running plays in the history of Off-Broadway. His play, The Tale of the Allergist's Wife, received a Tony nomination for Best Play and is the longest running Broadway comedy of the past 25 years. He wrote and starred in the film versions of my favorite movie, Psycho Beach Party, which he's going to have to talk about whether or not he likes it or not. I shouldn't say that to a guest, but I really, it's one of my favorite movies. And Die, Mommie, Die, the latter of which won him the Best Performance Award for the Sundance Film Festival. For 2 seasons, he appeared as Nat Ginzburg on the HBO series Oz, and is the author of the autobiographical novel Whores of Lost Atlantis. Mr. Busch was honored with a special Drama Desk Award for career achievement as both a performer and playwright. He is the subject of a documentary film. The Lady in Question is Charles Busch. And without any further ado, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome the ever fabulous Charles Busch. Charles, welcome to BrandTalkk.
Hey there, John. Lovely to see you.
Oh, just wonderful. We did this on my radio show about 5 years, and you were performing at the cabaret convention.
What was I?
Do you still do that?
No, I think I was never asked back. No, they're tough. They're tough over there. No.
Well, I got some juice over there. Not only do I know our mutual friend Scott Durkin, but I have some juice over there so that if we'll right. Because you were loved.
Don't waste
a wonderful job.
Don't waste your juice, Eddie. Don't waste it. No, actually, I don't even know. Honestly, I have different chapters in my life, and for about 8 years, I really was throwing myself into this new chapter as a cabaret performer. But I've kind of what I wanted and achieved what I wanted. Now I'm move on to the next one.
I got it. This is BrandTalkk. And we talk about brands, and you're listed here as an actor, playwright, cabaret entertainer. And my question to you is, what is your brand right now, today? If somebody were to meet you, I'm Charles, and they didn't know you. I don't know how that could be, but if they didn't know you, my name is Charles Busch, and I am blank.
Wow. That's a tough one. I need help, John. I ought to hire you to help me figure out my brand.
Anytime.
Because I do lots of things, but yet they all kind of come from the same source of story. I would say it sounds a mite pretentious, but I'm Charles Busch and I'm a storyteller.
I think
everything I do is about narrative. I'm addicted to narrative.
You do it so well. I got to tell you, when I do share my thoughts about you and your stories of Aunt Lil. I mean, I almost cry. I mean, you just write so beautifully, and I've come to this writing. I'm a blue collar guy. And you and I share similar things. I was a shy kid because I was overweight, and I was always made fun of. And I of course I didn't have some of the hardships that you had, but one of the beautiful things is Aunt Lil, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this wonderful woman that gives me goosebumps when I read your stories about Aunt Lil.
Oh, well, thank you, John. I really seriously kind of moves me when you say that. I was very fortunate that my mother had an older sister, my Aunt Lillian, who was widowed very early in my childhood and had no kids of her own. And I was really she kind of raised me really my whole life, even when my mother was alive. But my mother died when I was 7. And Aunt Lil really stepped in, and my father was a lot of fun, but not really a responsible parent, and so he really was more kind of a special guest star in my life. But and I enjoyed his company, and I mean, he was fun and affectionate, but just you could not depend on him. You were wise not to. But Aunt Lillian, you could depend on, and she just devoted herself to me, and I really, and in some ways, it's funny. People think that she's kind of my Auntie Mame, and yes, in a sense, in that was this Manhattan lady who adopted me and had me move with her into New York City. But she wasn't that kind of darling sort of flamboyant person, and she could actually in some ways was very shy, and so what I love is sharing her with the world via Facebook. I kind of like making her a star, and I bought a bench, put a plaque on this bench in my neighborhood in beautiful Abington Square Park with her name on it, and I get such a kick when people on Facebook say who I don't really know, but just say, oh, I went to Abington Square Park and sat on Aunt Lillian's bench, and I just think that's so sweet. That I don't know what the hell she would have thought, because she died in '99, way before Facebook and all this, and I just can't imagine what she would think that strangers sort of feel affection for her. So I've written a memoir that I finally finished after a number of years, and it's sort of out there now to be sold. So let's hope that I find a publisher. These are strange days that we're in. But then I hope that I can really just share her with people. I'd like to. I think that there's something that a lot of people can either identify with, because many people had a kind of surrogate parent, and I think there's something we can all maybe learn about just taking someone on and being a little bit selfless, and seeing the magic in someone else and trying to help them focus it.
Yeah. The story that really moved me, and I hope I don't break up here, was The Ring, that you misplaced.
Oh,
and how much it meant to her. And she was such a lady on how she handled it. Maybe do you mind
yeah, I'm
sharing?
very moved that you remember that.
Oh no, hey,
You're
I
me
don't.
very touched.
I am. There's one thing about me. I'm sincere, and when I say Aunt Lil moved me, that I mean I'm still getting the goosebumps. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but go ahead.
I cut that story out of my book too. I should put it back in. No, just my I was named after my mother's and Aunt Lillian's older brother Charlie, who was killed, the first casualty from World War II from Cincinnati, where they were from, and she just loved her brother, just worshipped her brother Charlie, and she used to say to me when I was growing up, "Oh, you're so much like Charlie. I feel like you're sometimes I just feel like you're Charlie reincarnated. You're so much alike." So in her jewelry box, which I used to kind of like to seeing all the, she was a very stylish Park Avenue lady, and anyway, she had a ring that was Charlie's, I guess, college ring that he wore that was on his finger and survived the plane crash, and it was slightly bent, and I just was fascinated by this ring that belonged to my namesake. You know, it's something physically tangible that made him seem so real to me. And she, I guess I was 14, and she decided to give it to me on my 14th birthday. She felt that I should have that, and I was so moved because I knew what he meant to her, and the one surviving relic, of his. And so I just, and it was too big for me, and she had it, she kind of put tape on it to try to make it fit my 14-year-old skinny finger. And I just couldn't believe that she trusted me. Within 24 hours, I lost it. It just slipped. It was too big for me in every way, and I was devastated. Somehow in school, I don't know, it fell off my finger. I didn't realize it. And I was so horrified, and I was afraid to come home. I didn't, I just was hysterical. And I know, and I could never lie to her. She was so smart. She could pick up anything, and her insight was so acute. And so I just had to come clean and told her, and she could see that I really was shaken up. I wasn't some cavalier. Lost it, and she did not scold me or get angry or anything. She said, and I got me choked up. She said, never shed tears over an inanimate object. Never shed tears over something that can't love you back.
Wow.
I just thought, wow. At 14, I thought this is extraordinary to have that kind of grace to just, she could sense, I was very upset about it, that I somehow almost betrayed her trust in me at 14. I think she even made it kind of, we're Jewish, but she was kind of a sort of scientific atheist in a way, I guess. And I was raised with no religion, no religious background, and so I didn't have any kind of bar mitzvah that traditionally says that 13 now you're a man. So in a certain sense, her giving me that ring was like my bar mitzvah, and then I blew it. But I think maybe I learned more from her reaction than any kind of spiritual schooling.
That is such a beautiful story, and it has the same effect on me as when I read it. Your brand is a storyteller. You really are a great storyteller. I'm telling you.
But I'm terrible for a storyteller. I'm interrupting you. I'm a terrible conversationalist. I keep interrupting you. But
it's your show. It's your. What I want you to do is I want you to shine. So you go and you do. That's why I didn't interrupt you.
I mean,
And I'm
well,
not going to, it's a different way of talking. Go ahead.
well, what I was going to say was just that yes, I would say my brand is storytelling. For instance, when about 8 years ago, I kind of I dabbled in cabaret at different points of my career, but I had never really focused on it like I have the past 8 years. And it came out of just basically a promoter calling me and out of the blue and saying that they could book me on a gay cruise line to do a cabaret act for quite a good sum of money. And I had not had an act and hadn't done any cabaret work in over 20 years, had no musical director, anything. But I thought, why not try it? And the pay was good. But what I did approach it as, the way I kind of approach everything is I try to approach it for new things from a positive point of view, as opposed to, oh, I can't do that for various reasons. I try to play a little bit of a game with myself on what do I have to offer. You know, maybe it'll turn out that I have nothing to offer this situation. But, you know, if I'm going to do this, what have I to offer? And I thought with cabaret, I'm not the world's greatest singer. You know, if you want really big, rangy notes, there are plenty of fellas out there who'll give that to you better than I. I thought, but I am a storyteller, and I think I can take a song and try to turn it into a bit of a 3-act play and really act it, and where maybe the tone may not be perfect, but hopefully if I am honest and really play each moment of the song, that could be an interesting experience for the listener. And then I thought, well, I have also a lot of literal stories to tell. You know, it's between songs, and I used the cabaret medium that way. And so often, really, my shows, cabaret shows, are it's changed a bit because I've learned so much about singing as I've done it these past years. But it's maybe 65% singing, 35% talk, and so it's very important. And I did love the directness of the communication, as opposed to being a play where I am playing a character. But this is literally, I am speaking to you, and you're all as if you're in my living room and sharing these songs that are, very beautiful songs from the American Songbook, but trying to give them an individual life through my interpretation and my being in touch with my own sense of drama. So so it does go back to storytelling, and I do visual art as well. But even there, when I do a portrait, there's a certain storytelling element to that. But I love narrative. My plays are strongly linear. I sometimes wish that I had the gift of a more abstract feeling, because I admire writing that's not so directly, from point to point. But it eludes me. I can't really do that. Same as in painting. My attempts at abstract art just look like wallpaper. No, I have, and everybody. And it's funny. It carries into my relationships as well. It's the idea of storytelling. Everybody I meet, in a certain sense, has everybody does have a story. Everybody has a story worth telling.
Absolutely.
A lot of people just don't recognize their own narrative.
Yes.
Often a shy person or a person who doesn't like themselves that much or whatever. But everyone has a story worth telling.
Yeah.
And I find my friends that, but I tend to tidy it up, like Tom Judson, who's my dear friend, who's been my musical director and arranger and cabaret partner for the past decade, is the most fascinating person. And and he knows it, because I mean, it's really a fascinating life. But I told him one time in the car, I said, you know, I have a version of your life that I tell people that I've kind of tidied up, and you might want to take it and use it. He said, well, what is that? So I told Tom the story of his life. He said, that's not at all what happened. He said, you've compressed years together. I said, yeah, but my way is better. You know, it's a little more touching that the way you made the choice because of this. But he goes, but that's not true. I made that choice because of this, and this, and this. I said, yeah, but this and this works better.
I love it. You're listening to Charles Busch, storyteller, and this is BrandTalkk, another way to talk. Every Thursday around 3:00, we get together with the greatest brands that have to speak about the brands. And today we're talking to Charles Busch. And one of the things that I brought this up the last time, but I'm going to bring it up again because it really, I think, can help the youngins in the group. And that is, first of all, I always gush over the fact that you went to Northwestern, and that was the school I wanted to go to graduate school to, and I didn't get there, but I have such a love of Northwestern. I wanted to be in the psychology program. It didn't happen. And you went there and you studied, was it drama? Was it dramatic arts?
Yeah.
And what you found is that you weren't getting roles. you weren't getting parts. And what you decided to do is write your own parts. And I'd like you to talk a little bit because that is really what young people, when you're first starting out, you don't have somebody to give that kind of advice to you. But so I like you to talk a little bit about that.
I guess, I mean, I suppose that's kind of my main achievement, I guess, was just that I wanted to be on stage since I can remember that. But and for a long time, early on, as a child, adolescent, my desire to be on stage was greater than my ability. You know, it was difficult. It was difficult, basically, being a gay child and being a somewhat effeminate gay child to be on stage. There was a certain sense when I would try to be in a play or even take an acting class as a kid that I had to somehow try to imitate like a normal child that I didn't really even understand. Right. So it was almost like I was like an alien, space alien, trying to imitate how humans act, you know. And so it was never going to be, I was never going to be as good as some kid who just feels free to just exist, be themselves. You know, there's always it's a very challenging thing for the gay kid. And then I got into Northwestern because I did not have to audition. My first choices were NYU, Boston University, the state school at Purchase, but you had to audition, and I didn't get in. But Northwestern, I don't know how I got in because my grades weren't very good either. I only think Lillian and I used to ponder how the hell they let me in to Northwestern, and it might have been that maybe they were impressed that I did so many things, that I was interested not only in acting but writing and visual art. But anyway, I got to Northwestern, and I was never ever cast in a university play, but I would say bravo to me in a way is that I was raised, and I do have to credit Aunt Lillian with this very pragmatic view. And she was always this is going to turn into the Aunt Lillian hour, I guess, but it's okay. That's okay. It's just that she raised me with a rather tough point of view of being rather brutally honest with yourself. and she would say, you don't want to be Blanche Dubois, you know. And 10 years old, I wasn't sure who Blanche Dubois was, but I got the gist, you know. And she never really explained things. It wasn't like in Auntie Mame, where Auntie Mame gives the young nephew the pad of paper, and anything you don't know, you write down. You know, she just assumed that I knew whatever reference she made. And but a kid, you pick up the gist. So, you know, whoever Blanche Dubois, that must mean, you know, you don't want to live in fantasy. And so it was always this kind of analyze your motives, analyze the situation, and so I saw, you know, even at 18, 19, that okay, I'm not getting these parts that I'm auditioning for. You know, this sort of young, juvenile young guy that even though I think I did a good audition, but there's a quality in me that's just not right for this part. And there was no, in 1972, 1973, there was no Torch Song Trilogy, Angels in America, Buyer and Seller, all these roles that an androgynous young man could play, or Terrence McNally's later plays, Love, Valor, Compassion. There was nothing to hope for. There was nothing there. And all I wanted was to be on stage. So I had to rethink how is this going to be, because I sensed that the university theater department is basically a microcosm of show business, and if it's not working here, it's not going to work in the big wide world. Fortunately, since I was from New York City, when I would come home for vacations, I started seeing the work of downtown, I don't know what you want to call it, avant-garde theater artists, like particularly Charles Ludlam, who had his own company and was an actor playwright, and used drag actors and drag just because they played the roles well. These, you know, men and the things that would seem to be a liability. My androgyny was not a liability, but an asset with love.
Right.
But I never wanted to be a part of this company. I wanted to, but he inspired me.
I love it.
To create roles for myself.
Yeah. And what I was impressed, as I was reading over your Wikipedia entry, the women that you portray are basically, and forgive me, I'm being the psychologist, I'm wearing my psychologist hat, was you could be the strong personality that you really weren't in real life. Can I be that bold? No, go ahead.
No, I agree with that. No, because the thing is, it's funny. Sometimes people write when I've done interviews with me, even recently, and they say, "Oh, I think it's a little facile, actually." People say, "Oh, because I play such theatrical ladies, that it would be that in real life he's, you know, sort of soft, little, gentle, quiet person," which I'm not. I can be. I mean, I am, right. But I think most people we're all many things in different situations. Sure. The way we are with this group of people in our life can be very different from the way we are with this kind of person. And yes, there are times when I am rather recessive and kind of closed off, and I can be shy. I'm not great at a party to just go up to people and, you know, "Hi, I'm Charles Busch. How are you?" You know, right. But if you introduce me at a party to some people who are, you know, I have something in common with, I can actually be the life of the party, and I can be too much too. I could sometimes decide I have a story to suit every occasion. And there are times I'm at dinner with somebody, I have to think to myself, just, you know, maybe, okay, you don't have to tell every fucking story about you and Joan Rivers, or you and the time you met Paul McCartney. You know, just, you don't have to tell it all. Just sit back and listen, and let somebody else have a turn. So yeah, no, I'm the life of the party, and I'm a contented recluse. But I'm really a dichotomy of everything. I mean, I do think that it's true for most people, but I think with me it might be more dramatic, that I'm I'm the life of the party. I'm quiet, shy. I'm male. I'm female. I'm young. I'm old. I'm all these different things, and it's I'm oblivious. I'm generous. I'm all those things. I'm
Yeah.
selfish. I'm selfish. I can be very very giving.
Yeah.
Depends on the mood.
Uh, and we're listening here to Charles Busch, storyteller, here on Brand Talk, and we're just about getting started now. And what I like to ask is, but before I ask the question, I'm going to give you my take.
Okay.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer movies or do you prefer the stage? And I always said that the stage is more real to the actor and the movies are more real to the viewer or to the audience, in the sense that with movies you take out of sequence the scenes, while on stage what you're doing is it follows a certain pattern
Mm.
and series of events. And I think most actors, in fact, prefer the stage. But I ask you, what do you prefer?
I would agree with them if you're the actor for hire. I can totally see that would be true. Now, for me, it's been different. I've only made a few movies. Now, the first few things I did on film were, I had small parts in big commercial movies, and then I had I had a recurring role in this HBO series Oz, but I had a couple good episodes. Most of the time, I was kind of in the background of other people's scenes, and I didn't really get it. To be honest with you, I didn't. I was just always very nervous that I didn't want to waste people's time because I had such a small part that you just don't want to cause trouble. So you just try to be you try to be efficient, but there's not much much more than that. However, when I had chances finally to appear in my own screen adaptations of my own plays, Psycho Beach Party, but particularly Die Mommie Die, which was really my movie, because Psycho Beach Party was more ensemble piece. But I love it so much, and I don't think. And then I did another movie which is nobody saw, but a movie that I directed and wrote and starred in, called A Very Serious Person. But those two experiences, Die Mommie Die and A Very Serious Person, I would say were the greatest experiences of my creative life. I don't think I've ever felt as totally engaged physically, emotionally, creatively, in every way. And even the piecemeal filming is different because I was a director, or in Die Mommie Die, I wasn't the director, but I worked so closely with the director, and it came out of my own mind. It was, I was the writer, and I was treated with such respect by Mark Rucker, the director, and that we were just so in sync that I, in a certain sense, might as well have been the director, just because I was so in sync with him and loved every choice that he made. So that was just marvelous, and it's addictive, and I've wanted desperately to make a movie ever since. Very Serious Person, and that was in 2000. When did we make that movie? About 2006. So it's been a long time, and I was very spoiled with those movies because they were basically handed to me. Just people the producers wanted to make these movies, and they hired me, and we did it, and all in a marvelous time. But that was rather rare.
Yeah.
The world of indie filmmaking that I'm part of.
Right.
I've tried very much, but finally, after all these years, I was almost going to give up and thinking that dream was kaput. But I found wonderful producers who are going to make a movie that I've written with my friend Carl Andrus, and we're going to direct it together, and I star in it, and we're supposed to start shooting October 5th. I just hope, I'm praying that the various health guidelines will be in place. They seem to be already for October.
Mm-hmm.
Hope things stays, just only get better. But whatever, I'm ready to go. And
may I ask what it's going to be about, or we can't discuss it?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's going to star my longtime muse, Julie Halston, and she's a funny, funny lady. And it's a contemporary kind of caper comedy.
I love it.
And it's set in the strange world of old movie collectors and film dealers. And I play this rather disreputable fellow who's got a terrible reputation for basically being kind of a scam artist of selling people what are supposed to be, old film reels that turn out to not to be, and all this. And the setup is that I look in on a very elderly old friend of mine to help him occasionally, and he's kind of a hoarder, and I find he's died in his sleep, and his niece is Julie, who's a widow, lives in Boca Raton in Florida, and she has to come to New York to sort of dispose of her uncle's hoarding collection, and I'm there to help her, but I kind of sort of want to exploit the situation. And we find in his horrible apartment this rare, supposedly lost Lon Chaney silent film that's so coveted by people in that field. And what do we do with this movie? On one hand, the moral thing would be to take this movie and give it to the Museum of Modern Art or Turner Classic Movies and share it with the world, or do we sell it for millions of dollars to a private collector, never be seen again by anyone? So it becomes a kind of a thing, and then somebody steals the movie from us, and we've got to get the movie back, and it's very zany, and but with a interesting point of view about lost film. So that's the thing. Yeah, I can't wait. And it's so exciting. It's so marvelous, particularly at my age, to be excited and to just be excited about something, and just that we're going to make this movie, and I'm thrilled about it. Can't wait.
Well, you're going to have to come back and promote the heck out of it because, I got this man crush on you. Well, I just think you're wonderful. And, it wasn't easy becoming your Facebook friend. I had to push Scott Durkin on it. And he said, so, but I'm not trying to embarrass you, by the way. I'm just, I mean, you must have you get a lot of requests, and I was just delighted, and we consummated the relationship at the cabaret convention where we went. We had that delicious party we both were at, overlooking Manhattan. Oh my God, I had died and gone to heaven. Not only was the music great, not only was the decor great, the scenery, but I was with Charles Busch. I mean, it couldn't be any better.
Well, thank you.
So
very, very kind of you. I was going to say something now. I kind of lost my track about the branding, and social media. It's been interesting. I certain elements work for me and others don't. Twitter doesn't work for me. I have a Twitter account, but I really think I've posted 3 times once. It's just that kind of the short written.
Yes, characters. No more than 240 characters.
I think it's very good for if you want to engage in particularly political discussion.
I don't think that's not your brand. I would, I teach a course.
Instagram I do a little better on Instagram, but even there, I need the storytelling, and
yes,
and I've used Facebook for all of its sinister connotations. It's been very helpful to me in many ways. It's certainly helpful, literally promoting cabaret appearance around the country.
Sure.
I know what I
Sure.
do at it. It really worked. But then when I first started on it in '97, I was writing just, I didn't really know quite how it worked. So they were mostly just short little things about how I'm going to be appearing here, and but then I gradually thought, gee, I'd like to put a little sugar with the medicine, and instead of just please come see me at the Raz Room and in New Hope, I would then tell a little story about putting the show together or something. And then I so enjoyed just sharing those anecdotes, and I got a million of them. So it became, then sometimes I just started writing the anecdote in itself, and I don't really need Facebook as a daily confessional or
right.
Or as, I mean, a lot of people, and that sounded rather bitchy on me to say that, but
No.
Facebook, I have friends who, and I think it's great that they do need Facebook as a certain kind of witness to their daily life, and they and I think I applaud them for it. So I'm really not being critical at all.
Right.
I don't need that, but I do love sharing my past and these stories and shaping them. And I had been working on this memoir for, oh gosh, off and on about 6 years. And in some cases, taking long, getting easily discouraged and not working on it for quite long periods of time and then getting distracted because I had another job to do, writing a play or something, or performing 8 shows a week. But Facebook was very helpful to me with this memoir, because sometimes I would take a chapter that I'd written and then edit it down a bit and then post it on Facebook and just get such immediate affection and feedback that it was encouraging, and I needed that encouragement, because I'm not as confident in prose as I am in drama. So that encouragement was really good for me. And then the opposite, I would sometimes write a story just directly for my Facebook page, and I would get such encouragement that I think, oh, I ought to put that in the book. That was a good memory. That's important. So yes.
Yeah. Charles, what discourages you? And when you get discouraged, how do you snap out of it? As they said Cher said in that movie. Go ahead.
Well,
what discourages you?
Well, there's certain things. There's discouragement and there's discouragement. And I've gone.
Yeah.
I'm quite resilient. However, there have been periods, rather long periods of my life. I had a kind of late midlife crisis, I guess you'd call it. I don't know. At about 60, that there was about a year or two of just, I hesitate calling it depression because that tends to be like really loaded. But I was John, I was in a bad mood for going on 2 years.
Yes.
And it was a time of, and I don't know if I don't literally think it had to do with turning 60. I think I was in my late 50s. I don't think it was as facile as that. But maybe just a certain time in a person's life. The second, if you divide life, maybe middle age starts at 40. I don't know, whatever. But certainly pushing toward 60. When there were realistic circumstances, plays that failed, things that I had great hopes for, just didn't work out, and I went through the period of just endless self-rumination, and I believe in calling in the Marines. I've been in therapy at different points in my life. Went back into therapy because I'm a big proselytizer for therapy, and I went back to see the shrink for a short period of time, just get myself out of this this just heaviness. And I went through such a brutal self-criticism where, and it was funny, ironic that at this time, Lincoln Center Library of Performing Arts contacted me about wanting to purchase all of my papers and manuscripts and all that, and it was just really a great honor. It was
Sure.
wonderful, and should have made me feel awfully good about myself, right? But I had to, in getting all of this stuff together, I basically had to reread everything I had written since the age of 10, and I was in just a dark state that I felt false. So that's good. I thought everything wasn't really very good, and plays of mine that were not successful, I reread, but no wonder they flopped. And things that were successful, I would reread and think, they like that, really? That's not that good. I really was pretty awful to myself, and then there were just certain, often when you're depressed, there are certain realities that are depressing.
Yes.
Opportunities lost, or but then I was endlessly ruminating on choices that I'd made in my life. Should I have done that? I didn't want to do that. Should I have done that? What's the point of saying that when you didn't want to do it? You just this endless going back and forth, and then I guess I think I wore myself out finally, and just found some kind of happiness, because I was just tired of being grim. But maybe I also worked out. I think I worked out a certain peace with what I had accomplished, and found a certain pride in what I had done. And maybe I hadn't done this, but I did do this, and that's something to be proud of.
Well, Charles, I have Eddie Cantor's saying that might put a little optimistic view of what you're expressing, and he said everybody's entitled to at least 10 bad years. So you don't, at least it didn't take 10 years for you to
it's about
snap out of it and share
about
with
2 years. Yeah, but the funny thing was that I'd always prided myself on my resilience. That when a play that I had great hopes for got bad reviews, and I would be angry, horribly disappointed. It lasts about 3 weeks, and then I get back on the horse again. But so it was disturbing to me that this time around that was not happening. But I moved on. And accepted the realities of my circumstances, but then try to find something new to be excited about and to work on. One of the things that helped me was I went kind of back to my roots in the East Village and started doing plays at Theater for the New City, which is a very raffish, marvelous, quintessentially downtown producing organization was founded by an extraordinary woman named Crystal Field, who is still running this theater. She founded the theater in the late 60s, and she's still running it with an iron fist today. And nothing will defeat her. But and I guess in a way she's kind of my theatrical mother. I somehow didn't realize it until I went through that crisis. And I'd had a professional relationship with her since 1982. She produced my very first play in New York at Theater for the New City. So over the last decade, I've returned almost every other year with a new play, and I found this. I have this little core of people who love me and want to do these plays. Carl Andrus, who I've had long. He's really he's much younger than I. So in some ways, I think of him as my son as well as my dear friend and collaborator. So he direct and produce the plays, and then there's a group of actors that I love, actors like Jennifer Van Dyke and Julie and Julie Halston. She's done some with me there, and just a group of new people that I found that I just adore being with, and I write these plays with them in mind. Often I come up with a fantasy of who I'd like to, what kind of old movie or theatrical genre I'd like to embrace, and what kind of part would I like to play, and then I write a list of who I'd like to hang out with.
Yeah.
Really.
Well,
and then I write parts that I figure out how to work a plot around that group of actors that I just want to spend time with, and it's a wonderful thing, and it really did help me get out of the kind of artistic funk that I was in. And we didn't invite any critics to these plays either, so there wasn't that pressure of we're doing anything other than for the joy of performing and the joy of giving this experience to this audience.
Right.
Because you can get distracted. I have been very fortunate with the New York critics. I mean, I cannot say that I've been treated unfairly. I mean, naturally you want a rave review every time, but even when I haven't, most of the time when I calm down, I sort of thought, I'll sort of see the point, maybe. And so I've been very fortunate. But there still is something about facing this battery of New York journalists that can get you confused, and you start thinking you're doing it just for them and not for the audience or for your own creativity. And I've been in situations with reviews where I thought, when we got the bad reviews, I thought, oh, why do we have to keep doing the play? We fail. Why do we have to keep doing it? And then when I've gotten rave reviews, I thought, why do we succeeded in what we set out to do? Why do we have to keep doing it? Yeah, that's not the right attitude.
Right. Let me ask you, who was the person that you most admired, the personality or the actor or the writer that you admired the most and you met? And you had, and who didn't disappoint you? I'm not going to ask who did disappoint you, but who was the person that you really most admired, that you admired, and then when you met the person, because generally there's a disconnect. They say you should never meet the people that you admire. So I'll throw that at you.
Well, I've met a lot of people over the past 45 years since I've been really in showbiz. Well, I'll answer two.
We froze up. Charles froze up. Well, Charles, while we get Charles back, go ahead. Okay.
We're back. Okay. Anyway, Charles Ludlam, certainly, who was my idol, really meant a lot to me, seeing him and that the fact that within his own history and his work that I saw as a very young person, the possibility for a career. So that was very important that I got to meet him, and he was a tricky personality, so I can't say we were friends, but that was very meaningful to me. However, I think you're going a little more on the celebrity quotient.
Sure.
The ones it's funny. I don't usually get I don't get nervous generally when celebrities come to see plays of mine. I'm pretty cool about that. But two ladies who really I got very self-conscious were Barbara Cook and Angela Lansbury.
Oh,
and it was because I'd gotten to know them both socially,
Yes.
and I knew that they liked me, but they'd never actually seen me perform. And so then when they finally came, each of them separately came to see me in a play, I was very nervous and so self-conscious. I don't think I was particularly very good those nights, because the whole time I was thinking,
Right.
Is Angie, she laughing at this? You think she like that? Maybe that's too dirty. But she like that. I mean, it's just very self-conscious.
Right.
She got it. And same with Barbara Cook. And I think it was because what made me more nervous was the fact that I knew that they liked me as that nice boy, but I wanted them to respect me and think I was talented. So it worked out. Out. Then I guess, big thrill was, I don't know how many, 10 years ago, maybe, Julie Halston and I were doing a revival of a play of mine called The Lady in Question out at Bay Street Theater in Sag Harbor. And Paul McCartney came to the show.
Oh my God, that would have been
good. And of course, Julie was, I think, the president of the John Lennon fan club at Comac at the age of 16.
Oh, great.
And Paul McCartney certainly was my first crush, as a,
sure.
And he's, I mean, you don't get much more famous than Paul McCartney.
No, absolutely.
He came to the show and came backstage afterwards, and it was so nice, and stayed about a half hour with us, and just
wow,
couldn't have been nicer. Every single person in the crew, and taking pictures and everything, and it just was heaven.
Let me tell you something. You bring out the best in people. Okay, so I just want you to know.
I don't know about that.
No. Well, maybe it's a good disguise, but I mean, when you're on, okay, there's nobody better. Let me tell you, you just make people. You're so warm, and you just make people want to have a conversation with you. So I can understand Paul McCartney not wanting to leave. Okay, or engaging. You're an engaging personality. Let's
try to be engaging. Some people have been very nasty to me. I don't know. It's funny is when I first kind of made my first splash with Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, I think people assumed that when they met me that I was going to be this really outrageous, bitchy drag queen who loves spraying insult humor and all that kind of thing. And they would come backstage, particularly a lot of sort of fashion people. And I could sense that they were disappointed that I was not that kind of,
right.
funny,
right.
You're yeah. So I had to kind of accept that I disappointed them, but that's not what I traffic in.
Yeah. In the few minutes that can you believe we only got another 2 minutes?
I could go for another 3 hours with you. I'm having a ball.
Well, the feeling is mutual, but I have to, because the reason that I initially reached out to you before Scott, and I loved Psycho Beach Party. It was my first Charles Busch movie. And I mean, you were so very funny in it. I mean, and I saw it on it was HBO. It was one of those cable channels, and I just loved it. I said, who is this guy? And I Googled you, and I said, I got to meet this guy. I got like a bucket list of people that I wanted to meet. And this had to be about 10 years ago. Well, it was longer than that. It was probably about 12, 13 years ago. And, when Scott mentioned that he knew you, I thought, well, I want to meet this guy. I want to take him to dinner, and we go to the same restaurants. There's some we like to go to vice versa. We know a lot of similar people. So anyway, when this is all over, this craziness is all over, you're going to be my guest. I got a great Italian restaurant we'll go to, and we'll invite Scott, whether or not he can come along. That's another story, but we'll do that. But talk a little bit about Psycho Beach Party and how that all started.
Well, let's see. Well, the play was the second play that I did. The next play after Vampire Lesbians is Sodom, and it was with my company Theater in Limbo. So we did that, and that ran about nearly a year. And I never thought I thought of it as a movie, particularly. It seemed like a very stage-bound theater piece. But I had the most extraordinary agent manager, Jeffrey Melnick, who just passed away last November. And I'm only now somehow really, I guess I was so busy that I tabled my missing him. And now suddenly, because I've got a lot of time on my hands, I'm just missing him dreadfully. And, for 30 years, this is a person who had such enthusiasm for me and loved me. And it could be just impossible. And, in the last year of his life, he was ill and lonely and out in Palm Springs, and was a rather difficult person. And we had our first sort of falling out, even, that we quickly resolved. But now the months have gone by. I just miss him so much. Anyway, he thought that this could be a movie, and I didn't really believe it, but he kept pursuing it for years. And finally, it took him about 12 years or something until it all worked out that he took on a new client, a young film director, Robert King, who had a deal with Strand Releasing to do a feature film. And so Jeff said, well, then you should make your film, do Psycho Beach Party, and team me with Bob King, and who taught me a lot about screenwriting, because I hadn't done that screenplay before. So that it all came. So Jeffrey really put it together, and then Bob King, who's was a very astute fellow, really knew movies, even though he had never directed a feature, but he shepherded me through that screenplay and had many ideas about how to open it up and turn it more into kind of a spoof of a slasher film, because there was very little narrative in certain sense in the play. There was no murders that took place. It was a much kind of lighter, little bubble of a play. And then I had originally, part of it, the basic premise is a spoof, evokes Gidget, the original Sandra Dee.
Right. That's why I loved it.
And I in the theater, I played the teenage girl. I played Gidget. They call her Chiclet in the play. I played that part. And then when we made the movie, it was many years later. So I was, at this point, I was in my 40s, and the idea was that it was not going to be that stylized a movie, that have somebody drag playing this, a middle-aged man drag playing this teenage girl. So it was always the idea that a movie would look so realistic, and it was indeed shot in the exact same locations in Malibu and Zuma Beach as all those beach party movies, exact locations. So it looked like those movies, and we were lucky to have found this very talented young girl, Lauren Ambrose, to take.
Lauren Ambrose. I forgot that she was in that.
She had already had some nice parts in big studio movies, but supporting role. I do believe this was the first movie that she, was the star of. And then a number of years after that, she did 6 Feet Under. And became so. But Bob really wanted me in the movie, but not as Chiclet. So
Well,
that's what we were thinking about. Well, there's the kind of Joan Crawford type, severe mother,
sure.
but I always liked having a biological actress playing that part.
Right.
With drag in my plays, I've always been, I'm very selective on which roles are cross-gender casting, and I like doing it not the obvious.
Yes.
The kind of dragon, mother would seem to be like the drag queen role. But I
Yes.
wrote for my friend, a wonderful actress who died very young, McGann Robinson, who was bigger than life and had this marvelous contralto voice. And a lot of people thought she was a guy in drag when they saw her in the play because she was so,
Yeah.
wigged and all this. And
Yeah.
but I thought it was interesting that she was a biological woman.
Yeah. Well, I want
Yeah.
to talk more about this, but for today,
Oh,
our time is up.
All
But
right.
when we come back, where you're going to promote the movie that you're doing, we're gonna really elaborate. I want to thank you so much for being on BrandTalkk, and I hope you had as much fun as I did
I did.
listening to you. You were
Wonderful.
just marvelous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Okay. So that's another show, BrandTalkk, another way to talk with the fabulous Charles Busch. And we'll see you next week here on BrandTalkk. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Charles.